Houston, we have a problem.
Let's discuss the moon landings, or the lack thereof. I find it so important because if NASA went to the moon, then they know it all. The size of the sun, the distance, the gravity, the orbits. They know it all. But if we didn't go, well, that changes it all. Let's read a quote here first to start off. One of the saddest lessons of history is this. If we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. Surprisingly, that quote is from Carl Sagan. Of course, he is talking about religion and how we were fooled, and then when we are confronted with the evidence of the bamboozle, we reject it. It's just too painful to acknowledge. But truth be told, science can also pull off a bamboozle of its own, especially if they were able to put something in textbooks and then call anyone who questions it a nut job. Here's another great quote from Carl Sagan. Finding the occasional straw of truth awash in a great ocean of confusion and bamboozle requires intelligence, vigilance, dedication, and courage. But if we don't practice these tough habits of thought, we cannot hope to solve the truly serious problems that face us, and we risk becoming a nation of suckers up for grabs by the next charlatan who comes along. And finally, a third quote from Sagan. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we are up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes rambling along. And so that's what I'm doing. Being skeptical, asking questions. Like, why are the facts around the moon landing easily forgotten? Let's start with Neil Armstrong and his greatest memory, that first step. One small step. It was a step, right? Or was it a leap? Let's see if he can recall.
Men walk on moon. The stage, the scene was this. Sunday, July 20th, as for the first time in our world's history, at 4:18, landing on the moon. After several hours in the module, at 10:56 p.m., one Neil Armstrong emerged, stepped down, placed his foot on the moon, and said,
"That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
And why did you say those words, Neil Armstrong?
Well, it was a natural thing. It was a step off the lunar module, a very short step, only about 6 inches down from the step. But more than 1/3 Americans had been working for a decade to make this happen, and it had been a lifelong dream. So it was a big step for all of those people.
So you may have noticed there that Armstrong said that more than 1/3 Americans had worked for a decade to make this happen, and that it was a big step for all of those people. He also says it was a small 6-inch step. Now listen to this.
Okay, I can leave that 1 foot up there and both hands down about the 4th rung up. There you go. Okay, now I think I'll do the same. A little more. About another inch. There, you got it? That's a good step. Yep. About a 3-footer.
Very short step, only about 6 inches down from the step.
That's a good step. Yep. About a 3-footer.
About 6 inches.
About a 3-footer.
About 6 inches.
About a 3-footer.
About 6 inches.
Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation.
Well, that sure is interesting. 3 feet or 6 inches. It was definitely one or the other, I guess. Let's talk briefly about Marion Moon. Buzz Aldrin's mother, who committed suicide a year prior to the television spectacle called the moon landings, because she was worried about the fame that would follow Buzz. Now, let's stop and think. So a year prior to Buzz going to the moon, his mother kills herself because her son will soon have fame and media will be all around, To me, that just doesn't make sense. Would a mother possibly cost her son his trip to the moon by killing herself? Well, she did, and days before the Apollo trip, during a press conference, the three astronauts are asked,
I wondered if each of the three could tell us very briefly how your families have reacted to the fact that you're taking this historic mission.
Well, who wants to take a crack?
Well, I think in my particular case, my family has had 5 years now to become accustomed to this eventuality, and over 6 months to face it quite closely. And I think they look on this as a tremendous challenge for me. They look upon it also as an invasion somewhat of their privacy and a removing of my presence away from the family for a considerable period of time. I'm not sure exactly whether this is the overriding feature over and above some of the other more pleasant aspects of the particular job that I have as far as it affects my family.
And so that was an interesting answer. Of course, he can't say his mother committed suicide because Buzz and his family, according to Buzz's book, told the coroner to lie about his mother's death and to say it was heart problems, and then only after the fact did Buzz come out and say that his mother, much like his grandfather, committed suicide. The lie was to make sure that there was no unneeded press attention brought upon Buzz or his family, but it's proof to me that lies are no big deal to Buzz Aldrin. Also, just wanted to point out on this timeline that they launched July 16th at 9:32 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and landed July 20th, a Sunday, almost 4.5 days later. The first step on the moon was 6.5 hours after that, and then they launched from the moon July 21st, 1969 at 1:34 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and splashed in the ocean 3 days later on the 24th of July at 12:50 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. An estimated 600 million people watched the Apollo moon landings live on TV, a record that stood until the wedding of Princess Diana in 1981. Remember, they wanted everyone watching live, and that's why Nixon made the federal and state governments, as well as city employers, give employees the day off on July 21st. So let's think. Do you really think the government would want people watching live if something were to go terribly wrong? What an embarrassment if this great moon race was capped off with a huge American disaster as the lunar module crashes to the moon while millions of Americans watch live with their young children. No, isn't going to happen. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew everything would be just fine. And remember, we went to the moon 6 times during a span of 4 years. And how many presidents were in office for all those moon landings? Do you remember? Nixon? You're right, there was one. Just Dick Nixon.
I welcome this kind of examination because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
And remember, Aldrin, Collins, and Armstrong would not even swear on the Bible that they went to the moon. Armstrong was even offered $5,000 cash to swear on the Bible that he could have given to charity. He declined, saying to Sibrel, "Knowing you, Mr. Sibrel, that's probably a fake Bible," which makes 0 sense. And you can add to that the fact that every Apollo mission made its own patch, and all of them were filled with their names, except Apollo 11. Again, important to point out the launch day of July 16, 1969, and the importance of Stanley Kubrick writing into his contract that he wanted Eyes Wide Shut to be released on July 16, 1999, the 30-year anniversary of the Apollo launch. Now, that did happen, but Kubrick didn't get to see that happen as he died on March 7, 1999, which was only 4 days after he showed the trial cut to Warner Brothers and 6 days after he showed it to the stars and his family. So one interesting thing is that March 7th, 1999 is the 66th day of that year. Also interesting is from that date of March 7th, 1999, until the end of 2000, the end of the millennium, was exactly 666 days, the next day being 1/1/2001, and of course, we all remember Stanley Kubrick's film 2001: A Space Odyssey. So yes, 666 days until the start of the new millennium. Now some people might say, wait a second, the new millennium started January 1st, 2000. But that's not exactly correct. Remember, 1999 and 2000 are both a part of the 20th century. We're now in the 21st century because the last year of this century will be 2100. Just look at it this way. To make a millennium, you need 1,000 years. So 1,000 is included with the years 1 through 199. That gives us the first 1,000 years. So 2,000 is included with the second 1,000. 1,001 through 1999 plus 2,000 equals another 1,000 years. So the question becomes, why did Kubrick want the movie released on July 16, 1999, which is 30 years to the day that Apollo launched for the moon? And another question for NASA fans, space fans, Mars or Elon Musk fans, why? No, I'm just kidding. If an asteroid or meteor were to hit Earth and it was big enough, humanity could be gone, right? Just like that. So everyone says we have to colonize Mars, but nobody asks, why in the world would we not have a base with 20 or 30 people on the moon? Think about it, because these are important questions. We've been there 6 times, and this would protect humanity from destruction. If a giant meteor ever hit Earth, we'd be able to repopulate. But we have no moon base. Why not? Well, pretty simple, because we can't go. That's why.